The Galactic Conclave had existed for 11,000 years. 11,000 years of careful diplomacy, of shifting alliances, of wars that burned star systems to cinders and treaties that rebuilt them. 11,000 years of species rising and falling, of empires that reached across the dark between stars only to collapse under their own weight. In all that time, no one had ever successfully attacked Earth twice. Commander Kaelzer of the Vreth Intelligence Division had spent 40 years of his career studying this anomaly. He stood now before the Conclave's Grand Assembly, 300 delegates from 267 species, and prepared to deliver the conclusion of his life's work. Honored delegates, he began, his translation node rendering his clicks and low-frequency pulses into the Conclave's standardized speech. I have come to explain the human question. The chamber fell quiet. Even the etheric delegates, who communicated partly through involuntary color shifts in their exoskeletons, went uniformly gray, the universal sign of absolute attention. The human question was not new. Every intelligence service in the Conclave had a file on it. The Kthari had 3 departments dedicated to it. The Maelorvian hegemony had once sent an entire fleet to investigate and returned with 12 fewer ships and considerably more questions than they'd started with. Why were humans never attacked? Oh, they had been attacked. That was the first thing Kaelzer established, projecting the historical record across the chamber's display field. 17 separate military actions against human space over 4 centuries of Conclave membership. The Darwin Purge. The Silence of New Canton. The Siege of the Kepler Corridor. 14 other conflicts with various names in various languages, each one remembered differently by the species that initiated them. None of them remembered those conflicts fondly. The pattern, Kaelzer said, is always the same. An aggressor attacks human space, sometimes for resources, sometimes for territory, sometimes simply because humans are perceived as weak, as a young species still finding its footing among the stars. The initial assault succeeds. Human losses are significant. Sometimes catastrophic. He paused, letting that register. And then something changes. The display shifted, showing engagement records, fleet movements, casualty statistics rendered in cold blue light across the chamber's curved walls. The humans do not retreat. They do not sue for peace. They do not appeal to the Conclave for intervention. Kaelzer's voice dropped. They adapt. Within weeks, sometimes days, their tactical doctrine shifts to counter whatever strategy the aggressor employed. Weapons that worked in the first engagement are somehow ineffective in the second. Supply lines that seemed secure are interdicted. Communication systems are compromised. The aggressor finds themselves fighting an entirely different enemy than the one they attacked. A Maelorvian delegate raised one of her 4 upper limbs. This is not unique. All species adapt during wartime. Yes, Kaelzer agreed. But no other species adapts at this speed. And no other species does what humans do next. He brought up a single case study. The Darwin Purge, 112 years ago. The Darwin Collective had launched a surprise assault on 7 human colony worlds, overwhelming local defenses in under a week. By every metric, it should have been a swift, decisive campaign. The Darwin were more numerous, better equipped, and had the advantage of complete surprise. What followed was 18 months that the Darwin still refused to discuss publicly. The humans did not simply defend their worlds, Kaelzer said. They identified every Darwin supply node within 40 light-years. They infiltrated Darwin communication networks with a sophistication that our own intelligence services still cannot fully explain. They found allies, minor species the Darwin had previously wronged, species no one had thought to consider as military partners, and they built coalitions in real time, while fighting an active war. He pulled up the final casualty figures. The Darwin lost 63% of their active fleet. They lost 4 core worlds. They lost their entire intelligence apparatus, which was rebuilt from scratch over the following decade. Kaelzer let the silence hold for a moment. They have not initiated a military action against anyone since. The Theric delegates had shifted from gray to a deep, unsettled violet. 16 other species, Kalzer continued, have had similar experiences. In each case, the aggressor believed they were attacking a manageable threat. In each case, they discovered they were not fighting a species in the conventional sense. Then what were they fighting? Asked the delegate from the Ven sovereignty, her voice carefully neutral. Kalzer had been waiting for this question. They were fighting a civilization that treats war as an engineering problem. He let that sit. Most species, he continued, experience war as a crisis, an interruption of normal life that must be endured until it ends. Humans experience war as a project. They document everything. They analyze everything. They have institutions, military academies, research universities, intelligence colleges, whose entire purpose is to study conflict, to understand it at a fundamental level, and to improve human performance within it. They have been doing this, without interruption, for their entire recorded history. The display shifted to show human historical records, not the stars and ships' history that most species knew, but something deeper. Bronze weapons and siege engines. Gunpowder and ironclad warships. Aircraft and nuclear fire. A species that had fought itself, continuously, for thousands of years before it ever reached the stars. They did not come to interstellar warfare as novices, Kalzer said quietly. They came as the most experienced practitioners of organized violence in their region of the galaxy. Every technique, every strategy, every psychological principle they had refined against each other, they brought it all with them. He brought up his final point. The one that had taken him 20 years to fully understand. But that is not why they are never attacked twice. He paused. They are never attacked twice because of what happens after the war ends. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every species that has fought humans and survived has found the same thing waiting for them when the shooting stops. Not demands for unconditional surrender. Not annexation. Not reparations designed to cripple them for generations. Kalzer's voice was almost wondering, even now, even after all his years of study. Trade agreements. Infrastructure proposals. Educational exchange programs. The humans arrive at the peace table and they build things. He brought up Admiral Darian Voss on the display, the current commander of Earth's combined fleet, the human who had personally negotiated the end of 3 separate border conflicts in the last decade. A tall woman with gray-streaked hair and the kind of stillness that came from having made genuinely difficult decisions and lived with their consequences. Admiral Voss gave a speech 3 years ago, Kalzer said, at the conclusion of the Kepler Accord negotiations. I have read this speech many times. I believe it is the most important document for understanding humans that exists in our archives. He projected a section of it. We don't fight to win. We fight to reach a place where fighting is no longer necessary. Victory, for us, is not a defeated enemy. Victory is a former enemy who has become something else. We have always known, from the very beginning, from the first wars we ever fought, that you cannot kill your way to safety. You can only build your way there. Kalzer let the delegates read it. This is why they are never attacked twice, he said. It is not purely because of what it costs to fight them, though the cost is severe. It is because of what it costs not to fight them afterward. The species that have tried to destroy humanity and failed have found themselves, within a generation, economically integrated with human space, defended by human diplomatic relationships, recipients of human technological exchange. The Darwin's current agricultural infrastructure was designed by human engineers. Their medical system was rebuilt with human assistance. He paused. The humans turned their most determined enemy into something that now has a vested interest in human survival. The chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, the Ven sovereignty delegate spoke again. So what do you recommend, Commander? What does your study conclude? Kalzer closed his files. He had spent 40 years on this question, and he had arrived at the same answer every time he reached the end of the evidence. Do not attack them, he said simply. Not because you will lose the war, though you will. Not because the cost will be catastrophic, though it will be. He looked across the assembled delegates of 11,000 years of civilization. Do not attack them because they will survive it. They always survive. And what comes after, the trade, the alliances, the slow quiet integration, that is not a consolation prize. He shut down the display. The chamber returned to its natural amber light. It is the actual plan, he said. It has always been the actual plan. I am not certain the humans are even fully conscious of it. But they have been executing it since before they reached the stars. He gathered his materials. They do not conquer, Commander Kaelzer said. They absorb. And every species that has tried to stop them has ended up part of the pattern. He left the chamber. Behind him, 300 delegates from 267 civilizations sat in silence, and thought about the quiet blue world at the edge of their star charts, and what it meant that no one had ever attacked it twice.